The cabin lights flickered, casting a sickly glow over the rows of passengers strapped in their seats. Flight 973 had just reached 30,000 feet over the Rocky Mountains, and what was supposed to be a routine cross-country flight had turned into a nightmare no one could have predicted. Captain Emily Harper gripped the yoke of the massive commercial airliner, her knuckles white beneath her gloves. Her mind raced, a torrent of protocols and emergency procedures running on autopilot even as her heart thudded like a war drum in her chest. She had flown countless missions before, but this wasn't a military sortie. This was real civilians, families, teenagers heading home from college, business people with urgent meetings, infants crying in their seats, and now a fire had broken out in the electronics bay. A sharp odor of burning plastic and ozone seeped through the cabin vents. Alarms screamed in a terrifying symphony that seemed louder than the engines themselves. "Cabin crew, report," Emily barked into the intercom. Her voice was calm but commanding, the kind that demanded attention and obedience. The flight attendants' faces, pale under their uniforms, appeared in the cockpit doorway. "Smoke is coming from the rear electronics compartment," one reported, voice trembling. "We can't contain it with the onboard extinguishers." Emily's jaw tightened. Her mind instantly calculated. If the fire reached the main hydraulic lines, the plane would lose maneuverability. If it spread to the fuel tanks, they were talking about an inferno that would tear through the fuselage in seconds. She glanced at her co-pilot, Lieutenant Marcus Lane, who had flown with her on multiple Air Force missions, but had never been in a situation like this. His usually steady hands shook slightly. She could feel the tension radiating off him in waves. "Marcus," Emily said, voice low but firm, "we're going to need to do something no one else is trained for." He blinked, confusion and fear warring in his gaze. "I mean it," she continued. "This isn't a standard flight. We may have to land this plane anywhere, and I'm going to have to go into the electronics bay myself." Marcus's eyes widened. You're talking about crawling into a burning compartment at 30,000 feet." Emily's lips pressed into a thin line. "If we don't, everyone dies." Behind them, the passengers shifted nervously. Some had noticed the flickering lights and acrid smell. Panic was creeping in, subtle at first, then growing as the cabin crew struggled to maintain control. A mother held her child tightly, whispering soothing words that sounded hollow even to her own ears. A businessman muttered a string of curses under his breath, scanning the overhead compartments as if escape might be an option. But there was none. At 30,000 feet over jagged mountains, Flight 973 was trapped in the sky. Emily moved quickly, issuing instructions with a calm clarity that masked the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Prepare for emergency descent," she told Marcus. "Notify air traffic control. We need vectors to the nearest open airfield, and keep the fire suppression system active as long as you can." The co-pilot nodded, his hands dancing over the controls with a mixture of training and terror. "We're losing altitude fast. The passengers need to stay calm." Emily exhaled slowly and pulled on her emergency harness, the straps biting into her shoulders. She opened the small access hatch to the electronics bay and peered into the dark, smoke-filled cavity. Flames licked the wires and sparks flew in unpredictable arcs. Her stomach twisted. Every instinct screamed at her to stop, to let someone else handle it. But she knew there was no one else. Her memory flicked back to a training session years earlier, in the chaos of a military simulation. She had been known then for her quick thinking and unshakable nerve under fire, a reputation that had earned her the call sign Phoenix. The same call sign that now felt heavier than ever, a symbol of responsibility she could not escape. Emily took a deep breath, tightened her grip on the ladder and began her descent into the inferno. The metal groaned under her weight and smoke stung her eyes. Every second felt like a lifetime. She could hear the passengers in the cabin above, murmuring prayers, whispering each other's names, clinging to hope that she could pull them out of this nightmare. She reached the core of the fire. The compartment was a tangled web of wires, circuits, and cables, some of them glowing red-hot. Flames danced dangerously close to critical avionics. She grabbed the handheld extinguisher and began systematically dousing the fires, her movements precise and deliberate. Sparks hissed and snapped around her, but Emily moved with the calm efficiency of a surgeon in the middle of an operating theater. A sudden jolt rocked the plane. The turbulence had grown violent, tossing her against the metal walls. She bit back a scream and kept working. The plane creaked and shuddered under the strain, the engines roaring like angry beasts. Somewhere above her, the passengers gripped their seats, praying that the woman who had gone into the flames was not lost. Hours or perhaps minutes, time had become meaningless, passed in a blur of heat, smoke, and sweat. Emily's gloves scorched her skin, and her lungs burned with every ragged breath. But finally, she managed to suppress the flames enough to prevent them from spreading further. She scrambled back to the ladder, sweat dripping into her eyes, lungs rasping with the effort. Marcus helped her climb back into the cockpit, his face pale but filled with awe. I don't know how you did that," he said, his voice trembling. Emily wiped her brow and forced a smile, though the exhaustion threatened to collapse her. "We're not out of the woods yet," she said. "The fire, under control, but the damage could still take the engines offline." The plane's alarms had quieted slightly, but a low, insistent warning beep pulsed from the main panel. The smoke had cleared enough to reveal the charred remnants of the electronics bay. Emily stared at it, heart still hammering. She had faced fire before in combat in training, but never like this. Never for civilians, never with so many lives resting solely on her shoulders. The passengers were beginning to realize that the danger had passed, at least for now. Nervous applause broke out, mixed with tears and muffled sobs, but Emily didn't feel relief. Relief was a luxury she couldn't afford. She scanned the cockpit instruments. Fuel readings were low, hydraulic pressure was unstable, and the navigation systems were partially offline. "We have to land," she said, more to herself than to Marcus. "Anywhere but safely." Marcus nodded grimly. He called air traffic control and began searching for the nearest suitable runway. Every second mattered. The plane could falter, engines could fail, and they would plummet into the Rockies below. Suddenly, a crackling transmission came over the radio. "Unidentified aircraft, you are entering restricted airspace. Identify immediately." Emily's head snapped up, her pulse quickened. This was no routine challenge. They were in a zone monitored by the U.S. Air Force, and now someone was noticing them. She picked up the microphone. "This is Flight 973 requesting emergency landing. Electronics fire contained. We need vectors to the nearest airfield." There was silence, followed by another, sharper transmission. "Flight 973, or should we say Phoenix, hold your position, clearance pending." Emily froze. Her call sign, the one she had carried in secret for years during covert missions, had been recognized. She had always kept it hidden, a ghost identity known only to a few in the military. Now, at 30,000 feet above terrified civilians, someone had recognized her. Marcus leaned over, eyes wide. "Did they just say your call sign?" Emily's lips parted, a mix of shock and disbelief washing over her. The voice on the other end had recognized her, the legendary Phoenix, the pilot who had earned a reputation in the Air Force for feats no one else could imagine. And now, in the middle of a commercial disaster, that past had just found them. The plane lurched again, a violent dip that sent both pilots clutching the controls. Outside, the Rocky Mountains stretched endlessly, jagged and unforgiving. Every runway was a potential lifeline, every second a chance to either save or lose the 164 souls on board. Emily's fingers tightened around the yoke. She glanced at Marcus, the smoke-stained instruments, the trembling passengers beyond the cockpit door. This was no longer just an emergency landing. This was a reckoning. And somewhere above, unseen but very close, F-35s had moved into position, their pilots scanning, their sensors locked. They recognized her. They knew the name. They knew the skill. They knew what had to be done next. But even as recognition sparked in the skies above, Emily didn't have time to wonder about it. She had to focus on the here and now, the lives depending entirely on her hands, her judgment, and the courage she had never doubted, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. The plane trembled again, as if the mountains themselves were testing her resolve. Emily took a deep, steadying breath and muttered under her breath, "Let's bring them home." A distant hum, subtle but growing, suggested she was no longer alone in the sky. And in that moment, a chilling awareness settled over her. This emergency wasn't over. Far from it. In fact, it was about to escalate in ways she could never have imagined. The cockpit door rattled slightly as the cabin crew checked in. "Captain, everyone is looking at you," one whispered, voice shaking. "They don't know who you are, they just know you're our only hope." Emily nodded, forcing herself to meet their eyes. She could feel their fear, their desperate need for assurance. And for a brief, impossible moment, she allowed herself a flash of her old self, the phoenix who had risen from countless battles, who had stared death in the eye and refused to blink. Outside, the horizon glimmered with the faint orange of dusk, the mountains darkening beneath it. Somewhere above, the F-35s were holding position, watching, waiting, ready. And somewhere inside her, a deeper resolve was forming. Whatever happened next, she would not fail. Not now. Not with 164 lives depending on her. And then, a sudden alert from the cockpit's radar made her blood run cold. Something was closing in fast. Emily Harper's eyes darted to the radar display, the red blip moving unnervingly fast toward them. It wasn't a plane she recognized from civilian or commercial traffic, not a flight path anomaly. Something or someone was intercepting them. The hairs on her neck prickled, an instinct honed through years of combat flying. She realized immediately, this was no ordinary emergency. Marcus Lane leaned over her shoulder. "Captain, that blip, it's closing fast, too fast for any commercial craft." Emily didn't reply immediately. Her mind raced through every possible scenario. Military intercept, rogue aircraft, drone. Whatever it was coming, and they were vulnerable, fragile, suspended in the sky with 164 civilians depending on their next move. "F-35s, she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "They're supposed to be monitoring. They must have eyes on it." Her comm crackled. The voice was tense, clipped, professional, Air Force, unmistakably so. "Flight 973, the voice said. "This is call sign Viper Lead. Identify yourself immediately and maintain course. You are entering restricted airspace during an active operation. Do not deviate." Emily's heart pounded. She picked up the microphone. "This is Flight 973. We have an onboard emergency. Electrical fire contained but critical systems damaged. Request vectors for emergency landing. We have civilians on board." A pause, then a metallic, almost incredulous tone. "Flight 973, or should we say Phoenix?" Emily froze. The legendary call sign, the one she had carried secretly through decades of classified missions, was spoken aloud. Her heart skipped a beat. Marcus looked at her, stunned. They know you." "They do," Emily replied, jaw tight. "And they're watching everything we do." Suddenly, the radar blip surged forward again. Emily's stomach knotted. The object was closing in at impossible speed, zigzagging with precision, anticipating their every maneuver. "Marcus, I need you on manual override. We're going to have to make this a controlled maneuver. Hold her steady." Marcus nodded, sweat glistening on his brow. He gripped the controls, hands trembling but steady. The plane shuddered under their combined effort as Emily plotted a descent toward the nearest emergency airstrip, a small military runway nestled in a remote valley below. "Viper Lead, we're heading for emergency landing. Request immediate escort. Civilian passengers on board. Time is critical, Emily relayed. Copy that, Phoenix, the voice said. Hold your position, our flight is inbound. You are cleared for escorted descent. Do not deviate from instructions. Emily exhaled sharply. The recognition of her call sign had worked in their favor. Now the F-35s would cover them, but there was still the approaching blip. Something unknown, something fast, something dangerous. The first F-35 broke the clouds like a streak of silver lightning, engines screaming, lights piercing the dusk. Emily felt a surge of both reassurance and awe. She knew the pilots would recognize her tactics, her style, the precision and audacity that had earned Phoenix her reputation. And yet, there was no time for sentimentality. The unknown object lurched again, circling them with impossible agility. Emily's mind raced. It wasn't behaving like a conventional aircraft. Its speed, its maneuvers, almost intelligent, almost predatory. Marcus, watch the altitude, she said. We need to stay high enough for control, low enough to land safely. The F-35s will keep it at bay, but we have to stay in formation. The cockpit vibrated as the turbulence worsened. Sparks from damaged circuits still sizzled faintly on the panel, a reminder that the plane was wounded, fighting for its own survival. She could feel the strain in the airframe, subtle, almost imperceptible at first, but growing. The passengers, oblivious to the precise danger beyond the cockpit doors, murmured nervously. Emily could hear their whispers over the comms, some praying, some crying, some silently gripping the armrests as the plane tilted slightly. She could not let fear ripple through the cabin. Not now. Not ever. Outside, the first F-35 executed a tight defensive orbit, engines howling. Its pilot's comm buzzed in her earpiece. Phoenix, unidentified aircraft, is approaching rapidly from the port side. It's maintaining distance but closing. We have visual. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Emily's pulse accelerated. Understood. Marcus, keep her steady. We'll give them some room. I don't want to provoke it unless we have to. The red blip streaked closer, shifting unpredictably. For a moment, Emily thought it might be a rogue drone, but no drone could move with that kind of speed and decision-making. It was intelligent, almost deliberate, and it was studying them. The F-35s took positions, wings angled, sensors locked. Emily marveled at the synchronization. The pilots, trained to react in milliseconds, had already adapted to her presence in the sky. They respected her, recognized her skill, and now they were working in tandem with her on a civilian airliner, a fragile giant in a theater of supersonic predators. Below them, the emergency runway appeared, a narrow strip carved into a mountain valley, surrounded by dense forests and steep cliffs. Emily's eyes narrowed. "We can make it," she said, more as a declaration than reassurance. "We have to make it." Marcus adjusted the throttle, carefully modulating the engines. The plane groaned as the damaged system strained. Emily's hands flew over the remaining functional controls, guiding their descent. The fire suppression system still hummed faintly, smoke rising from the charred electronics bay. She could smell the lingering ozone and plastic. Her lungs burned with each breath, but she refused to panic. Not now. The red blip surged forward again, faster than before. One of the F-35s engaged, performing a high-speed intercept that pushed the object away. Emily barely had time to register the maneuver. The unknown craft veered sharply, retreating momentarily, but it was clear. It would not leave them alone. "Phoenix," Viper Lead's voice cut through, "our intel confirms what we feared. This is no civilian or enemy aircraft. It's unknown. It's capable of extreme velocity and adaptive flight patterns. You are cleared to land immediately. Do not engage. We will handle intercept." Emily swallowed hard. Unknown, adaptive, capable of extreme velocity. Her heart skipped. She had trained for emergencies, for hostile engagement, for fire, for mechanical failure, but never for something like this. And yet the eyes of 164 civilians were on her, and she would not let them down. She glanced at Marcus. His hands were steady, jaw set. "We've got this," she said quietly. "We've got to trust the F-35s, follow my lead, and bring us home." The runway grew larger, a thin strip in the valley, illuminated faintly by emergency beacons. Emily aligned the aircraft carefully, factoring in wind, turbulence, and the subtle sway caused by the damaged electronics. The F-35s flanked them, engines screaming, forming a protective wedge around Flight 973. The unknown craft hesitated, circling, observing. Emily could feel its presence in the air, a silent predator testing her limits. Her calm crackled again. Viper Lead's tone was sharper this time. "Phoenix, you're in final approach. We have you covered. But that entity, it's unpredictable. Brace for any anomalies." Emily's stomach twisted. Predictable anomalies were one thing, unpredictable ones. That was chaos, but she had never backed down from chaos before. Not in combat, not in training, and not now with lives dangling on the edge of a razor. The valley rushed toward them. Emily's hands tightened on the controls. Marcus mirrored her movements, eyes scanning the instruments. The plane shuddered. The engines groaned. Sparks flickered faintly from damaged panels. Then, as if sensing the climax of their descent, the unknown craft accelerated once more, streaking toward them in a blur of motion. The F-35s banked sharply, engines screaming, and intercepted, forcing it to veer just in time. Emily exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "We're clear for now," she murmured. But the hum of the engines, the tension in the air, the looming cliffs of the valley, all reminded her that the danger was far from over. They were not alone in the sky, and someone or something was watching, waiting, learning. As the plane stabilized over the runway threshold, Emily's gaze flicked to the horizon. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the mountains, and in that moment she understood that whatever happened next would define everything, not just the passengers' lives, but her own legendary legacy. The runway lights loomed larger. The F-35s flanked them protectively. The unknown threat circled at a distance, bidding its time. Emily's fingers tightened on the yoke. The 164 souls aboard were counting on her. And somewhere high above, a voice, calm, professional, and tinged with awe, spoke again. "Phoenix, we've got eyes on it. Engage only if necessary. But your landing is critical. You are humanity's best chance right now." Emily's pulse quickened. She had always risen to impossible challenges, but nothing in her career had prepared her for what was coming. The valley floor rushed up to meet them, and in the cockpit, the legendary call sign Phoenix felt heavier than ever, burning with the weight of expectation, courage, and an unknown reckoning that had only just begun. The valley stretched beneath Flight 973 like a chasm carved by fate. Emily Harper's hands were steady on the yoke, every muscle coiled with anticipation. The runway appeared closer now, a sliver of tarmac clinging to the forested floor below. The F-35s flanked them in perfect formation, engines screaming, lights cutting through the growing dusk. But the unknown craft had not disappeared. It loomed above them, a shadow in the fading sunlight, moving with unnerving precision, its intent impossible to read. Emily could feel its presence, like an animal circling prey, assessing weaknesses, testing reactions. Marcus Lane adjusted the throttles carefully, sweat streaking his face. "Captain, it's still tracking us. Whatever that thing is, it's fast. Too fast for anything conventional." Emily's jaw tightened. Just keep her steady, trust the F-35s, they know what they're doing. The passengers were restless now. Whispers, prayers, and the soft cries of children filled the cabin. Emily could hear the nervous trembling in their voices, the shared fear of being trapped 30,000 feet above unforgiving mountains. She forced herself to focus, to push down the rising panic. Every life on board depended on precision, not emotion. The first F-35 executed a sharp turn, placing itself directly between Flight 973 and the unidentified craft. Its pilot's calm crackled. "Phoenix, keep her steady. We've got this side covered. That object is testing us. Don't engage, stay focused on the landing." Emily nodded, teeth gritted. The unknown aircraft jerked and twisted in response, darting closer, then retreating, as though playing a cruel game of aerial chess. She could feel her heart rate climbing, yet she forced herself to breathe evenly, calibrating every control input with millimeter-perfect accuracy. The valley floor loomed larger. The forest gave way to sheer cliffs on either side, leaving a narrow corridor for Flight 973. Any deviation could be catastrophic. She glanced at Marcus. His jaw was tight, hands steady but tense. He caught her gaze and nodded, silently conveying that he trusted her completely. Emily muttered under her breath, "We've handled worse." But worse didn't include being tracked by something unknown and potentially lethal, with civilians strapped helplessly inside. The plane shuddered violently as turbulence rippled through the valley. Emily gritted her teeth and adjusted the ailerons, compensating for the sudden gusts. Sparks from the damaged electronics panel flickered faintly, a reminder that Flight 973 was a wounded giant. She glanced at the fire suppression readout. The systems were still functional, barely. One wrong move could reignite the blaze. The unknown craft lurched forward again, attempting to match their descent. Its movements were deliberate, almost intelligent. Emily realized that its pilots, or its AI, were trying to herd them to force an error. Viper Lead's voice cut in again. "Phoenix, unknown aircraft maintaining aggressive patterns. Maintain focus. Your landing is paramount. We've got you covered, but you may have to make adjustments on the fly." Emily's fingers tightened around the yoke. "Understood." The runway was almost within visual range now, a thin line illuminated by emergency beacons, surrounded by trees and cliffs. She adjusted the descent, her eyes flicking constantly between the instruments, the approaching strip, and the F-35s flanking them. The unknown craft moved unpredictably, testing every reaction. Marcus exhaled sharply. "We're aligned, Captain, but the approach, it's narrow. Any miscalculation—" "I know," Emily interrupted. "We won't miscalculate." A sudden jolt sent the plane tilting dangerously. Emily instinctively corrected, her instincts honed by years of high-stakes flying. She could feel the tension in the airframe, each strain echoing through the fuselage. Passengers gasped in unison, gripping seat handles, unaware of the exact nature of the threat, but aware that something extraordinary and terrifying was happening above and around them. The first F-35 darted toward the unknown craft, performing a daring maneuver that forced it to veer slightly off course. Emily felt a fraction of relief, knowing that her allies were holding the threat at bay. But she could sense it would return, relentless and calculating. As Flight 973 descended, the valley seemed to close in around them. Trees rushed past on either side, cliffs looming like sentinels, shadows stretching across the fuselage. Emily's focus sharpened, each second a calculation of distance, speed, and trajectory. She could feel the weight of 164 lives pressing down on her, a responsibility both crushing and clarifying. Marcus spoke quietly, almost in awe. "Captain, you're doing it. We're going to make it." Emily allowed herself a brief glance at the passengers through the cockpit door window, faces pale, eyes wide, some crying, some praying silently. They didn't know her reputation. They didn't know she was Phoenix. They only knew she was their lifeline, and she would not let them down. The unknown craft hesitated, then surged forward again. Its speed was extraordinary, and Emily felt a cold twinge of fear. This was no ordinary aerial threat. It was intelligent, adaptive, and relentless. Viper Lead's voice was steady but firm. "Phoenix, final approach. You are clear to land. Maintain course. We'll handle the unknown. Trust your training." Emily's pulse hammered. "Understood." She aligned the plane with the narrow strip, calculating every degree of tilt, every foot of descent. Marcus mirrored her movements perfectly, their synergy in the cockpit a dance of precision born of years of training. The landing gear deployed with a shudder, the wheels touching the tarmac with a tense screech. Emily allowed herself a flicker of satisfaction. They were on the ground. But relief was fleeting. The unknown craft hovered above, circling, assessing, waiting for the next move. Emily's heart still pounded as she taxied toward the cleared section of the airfield, guided by flashing beacons. The F-35s maintained their defensive formation, engines roaring, lights cutting through the evening haze. Passengers began to exhale, tears of relief mixing with exhaustion. Flight attendants moved quickly to reassure them, guiding frightened children and calming anxious adults. Emily allowed herself a moment to glance back at them, a pang of protectiveness surging through her. Marcus muttered under his breath, voice trembling slightly. "We did it, we actually did it." Emily didn't reply immediately. Her gaze was fixed outside, scanning the skies. The unknown craft had not departed. It lingered, watching, waiting. She could feel its presence, a silent warning that this ordeal was far from over. The runway cleared, the plane came to a stop, and emergency crews rushed forward. Emily opened the cockpit door, allowing herself a moment to breathe in the cool mountain air. The smell of smoke lingered faintly in the cabin, a reminder of how close they had come to disaster. Then through the comms, a familiar, authoritative voice cut through. "Phoenix, you handled that flawlessly, but there's more. The entity you just encountered is under investigation. We need you to report immediately." Emily's heart skipped. Investigation. Entity. Not aircraft, not drone. Entity. Her mind raced. Whatever had pursued them, it was something beyond conventional understanding, and now she would have to face it directly. The F-35s descended alongside, engines roaring in unison, signaling both recognition and respect. The pilot's presence was a reassurance, but also a reminder. They knew her legacy. They trusted her skill. But the unknown threat was still alive, still intelligent, still assessing. Emily exhaled slowly, trying to steady herself. She looked at Marcus, who gave her a slight nod, silently asking if she was okay. She managed a tight smile. "We landed them safely. That's step one." The passengers began disembarking under guidance, faces pale, exhausted, yet alive. The applause, the whispered thanks, the trembling hands, Emily felt the weight of it all. Every life saved was a testament to training, courage, and split-second decisions. Yet the unknown craft lingered in the sky, a shadow that refused to fade. Emily understood that survival had only brought them to the next challenge, and somewhere deep inside, a quiet fire ignited. She was Phoenix. She had faced impossible odds before, and whatever this was, she would face it next. The sun dipped fully behind the mountains, leaving a dusky twilight in its wake. The air was electric with tension. The F-35s hovered protectively, the unknown craft observing silently, and Flight 973 stood as both a triumph and a beacon of imminent danger. Emily Harper exhaled, gripping the controls one last time as the adrenaline ebbed. She had saved 164 lives. She had landed a damaged plane in a hostile environment. She had faced a threat no one else could even comprehend. But the story was far from over. Above, the unknown craft tilted slightly, its intent unreadable, and a sudden pulse of energy rippled through the valley. Emily's eyes narrowed. Whatever it was preparing for its next move. And Phoenix was ready. The runway lay quiet now, shrouded in dusk and the residual hum of the damaged plane's engines. Emergency crews swarmed around Flight 973, guiding passengers safely away, yet Emily Harper remained in the cockpit, eyes fixed on the sky. The unknown craft hovered motionless, or as motionless as something so impossibly fast and intelligent could appear. Her instincts screamed, this wasn't over. Marcus leaned against the yoke, still pale but steady. "Captain, what is it? What are we dealing with?" Emily exhaled, muscles tense. I don't know, not entirely, but it's not just an aircraft. It's adaptive, intelligent. It learns, it evaluates, and right now it's studying us. Outside, the F-35s hovered like silent predators, their pilots maintaining formation, engines glowing in the fading twilight. Emily could almost feel their calculated patience, the trust they placed in her judgment. Recognition of the call sign Phoenix had opened a door, yet this entity didn't care about call signs, ranks, or reputation. A sudden burst of comms interrupted the tense silence. The Air Force Ops Center crackled in her headset. Phoenix, do you copy? Entity remains in proximity. Preliminary scans suggest energy output far beyond known aircraft. Recommend containment protocol. Emily's pulse quickened. Containment protocol. That was not standard aviation procedure. That was something unprecedented. Her gaze flicked to the unknown craft. It tilted slightly, almost deliberately, as though sensing the conversation. Marcus swallowed hard. Captain, are we going to have to? Emily cut him off, voice sharp. We're not engaging unless we have to. Right now, our priority is civilian safety and damage assessment, but we need a plan fast. She keyed the intercom. Passengers, please remain calm. You're safe on the tarmac. Emergency crews are handling evacuation. No one leaves until we get a full assessment. I need you to trust us. Please follow instructions. A mother with an infant glanced at her through the cockpit window. Emily met her eyes, and the woman's grip tightened instinctively on her child. Emily forced a calm smile, though inside, every nerve was alert. Above, the unknown craft made a subtle, almost teasing move, arching slightly, then retreating a few hundred feet. Emily noticed the precision, the deliberate patterning. Whoever or whatever was controlling it understood tactics, calculated risk, pressure, observation. Viper Lead's voice came through again, calm but urgent. Phoenix, we need to establish containment perimeter. Entity is responding to our presence but hasn't engaged directly. Scans suggest extreme maneuverability and energy projection beyond conventional limits. Recommendation: maintain distance, keep civilians away, and prepare for interception. Emily's eyes narrowed. Understood, but interception is tricky. It's faster than anything we can throw at it. We need intel first. One of the F-35s banked, engine screaming. Its pilot, Viper 2, called in. Phoenix, the object is mirroring us. Every movement we make, it adjusts. If we force engagement too early, it could react unpredictably. We've never seen anything like this. Emily exhaled slowly, weighing every option. They had survived the fire, the descent, the near miss with the unknown craft. But this was new. And if it escalated, the lives of the passengers, the emergency crews, and potentially the surrounding valley could be at risk. Her mind flicked back to the call sign, the legend she carried. Phoenix, rising from impossible odds. She had faced death in countless forms, combat, training accidents, hostile fire. But nothing had prepared her for an unknown entity that could calculate faster than any human or AI she'd ever encountered. Marcus, she said quietly, tone measured, we're going to run diagnostics. Engines, hydraulics, electrical systems, everything. I need to know what this plane can handle if things escalate. Marcus nodded, running through the checks. Systems stable mostly. Damage from the fire contained. Electrical glitches intermittent. Landing gear functional. Hydraulic pressure fluctuating slightly but manageable. Emily scanned the instruments. Every second counted. Outside, the unknown craft drifted closer, moving like a predator assessing its prey. Its shape was unfamiliar, angular yet fluid, almost organic. And yet there was intelligence there. Method, strategy, observation. Phoenix, scanning, suggests it can read energy signatures. Avoid aggressive maneuvers near civilians. Its intent is unclear, but caution is advised. Emily's eyes narrowed. She could feel the weight of the entire situation pressing down. the lives of 164 civilians, the fragile mountain runway, the presence of advanced military aircraft, and now this unknown entity with capabilities far beyond anything documented. The dusk deepened, shadows stretching across the valley. Emily knew she had to act, but with precision. Any sudden move could provoke the entity. Any miscalculation could endanger everyone. She keyed the comms to Viper lead. "We need a strategy. Keep it contained without provoking it. Monitor its patterns. We need to understand its behavior before escalation." There was a pause. Then, "Understood, Phoenix. Maintain position, we're tracking, but be advised its next move could be decisive." Emily nodded, more to herself than anyone else. "Decisive," she repeated quietly, letting the word anchor her focus. The unknown craft shifted again, moving slightly closer. Emily's pulse quickened. Its movements weren't random. It was analyzing, learning, adapting. Every flinch, every engine adjustment, every radio transmission, it cataloged and processed. Marcus leaned closer. "Captain, it's almost curious, watching us." Emily's lips pressed together. "Curious, yes, but curiosity can turn to aggression in a heartbeat. We have to be ready." The F-35s tightened formation, forming a protective ring around Flight 973. Engines screamed in unison, lights blazing against the twilight. Emily felt a rare surge of reassurance. The pilots had seen her handle impossible odds before. They trusted her. And now, together, they formed a barrier, a shield against an unknown threat. Suddenly, a low vibration rippled through the valley. The ground beneath the runway trembled slightly. Emergency crews froze mid-step. The unknown craft pulsed a subtle energy wave, not directly attacking but testing, measuring. Emily could feel the tension radiating through the plane. "Phoenix," Viper Lead's voice said, calm but urgent. "Energy readings are escalating. Unknown craft is active. Prepare for potential engagement." Emily's chest tightened. Engagement was not her preferred course. She had survived by calculation, patience, precision. She wasn't about to provoke an entity capable of extreme velocity, intelligence, and unknown power. Yet she knew it might come to that. Her hands tightened on the yoke. Marcus mirrored her tension, understanding her unspoken calculations. Flight 973 was vulnerable on the ground, damaged from fire and turbulence. They had survived landing, but survival alone wasn't enough. They needed control, intelligence, strategy. Emily exhaled slowly. "We hold, we observe, we learn, and if it moves toward civilians or the plane, we respond. Controlled, precise, but decisive." The unknown craft tilted slightly, almost imperceptibly, as if acknowledging the plan, or perhaps mocking it. Its presence loomed in the sky like a dark promise, a reminder that the real test had only just begun. Emily glanced at Marcus, ready for anything. He nodded, jaw tight. "Always." A sudden pulse of energy radiated from the entity. Instruments flickered. Sparks danced along the edges of damaged panels. Passengers, still being evacuated, flinched instinctively. Emily's heart raced. And then the voice came again over comms, calm, controlled, tinged with recognition and awe. "Phoenix, you've survived every impossible scenario thrown at you. But this is beyond everything you've faced. Prepare. The next move will define the skis." Emily's hands gripped the yoke tighter. Her pulse roared. She glanced at the valley below, the F-35 circling protectively, and the unknown entity hovering in calculated silence. Whatever was coming, it was unstoppable, intelligent, and patient, and she would have to rise higher than ever before to face it. The night deepened, shadows stretching across the mountains. Flight 973 sat vulnerable, engines humming softly, passengers safe for now. But Emily Harper Phoenix understood the truth. The sky itself had become a battlefield, and they were only at the opening moves. The unknown craft pulsed once more. And then, suddenly, it darted. faster than anything human eyes could track, toward the valley, toward Flight 973, toward a confrontation that no one aboard would forget. The pulse of energy rippled through the valley, rattling Flight 973 as though the mountains themselves had shuddered in fear. Emily Harper's fingers tightened on the yoke, knuckles white, as the unknown craft darted closer, faster than any conventional aircraft. The F-35s flanked her, engines screaming, lights slicing the twilight haze, forming a protective perimeter. But even their formidable presence could not erase the primal terror that surged through the cockpit. This was no ordinary threat. Marcus Lane glanced at her, eyes wide but resolute. "Captain, it's coming in hard, too fast to dodge." Emily's jaw set. "Then we hold steady. Let the F-35s engage if needed. We're keeping our priority, the passengers." The unknown craft twisted midair, performing maneuvers that defied physics. Sharp climbs, sudden drops, near impossible angles. It moved like a predator testing the defenses before a strike. Its shape was angular, alien, yet there was an almost organic flow to its movements. Every motion suggested intelligence, strategy, and a chilling awareness of Flight 973's vulnerabilities. Viper Lead's voice cut sharply through comms, clipped, professional, tense. "Phoenix, it's making its move. Interception required. F-35s are engaging, but it's adapting to our maneuvers in real time. Be advised, hold course and maintain altitude. Your landing is secondary if it escalates." Emily exhaled, pulse racing. "Understood, Marcus, brace for turbulence, hold her steady." The unknown craft surged forward, targeting the F-35s first. In a blur of motion, it darted between two of the jets, forcing them into aggressive evasive maneuvers. Explosive thrusters lit the sky in streaks of orange and white. The pilots reacted instantly, banking sharply, avoiding the craft's near-impossible trajectories. But it was clear. This entity could anticipate, react, and counter faster than any human could follow. Emily's mind raced. Flight 973 was vulnerable, but the F-35's coordinated tactics bought her precious seconds. Seconds she could use to calculate, adjust, survive. Her legendary call sign Phoenix wasn't just a title, it was a mindset. Calculation under fire, courage under impossible odds, precision when chaos threatened to consume everything. The craft darted again, moving closer to the plane now, its movements deliberate, almost taunting. Emily's eyes flicked between the radar and visual sighting. Sparks danced faintly along the damaged electronics bay panel, a reminder that even minor jolts could ignite another disaster. "Marcus," she said quietly, voice calm but urgent, "we're going to have to execute evasive maneuvers while on the ground if it pushes closer. Ready for a controlled taxi and dodge." Marcus swallowed hard but nodded. "Ready, on your lead." The unknown craft pulsed, a wave of energy emanating outward. Flight instruments flickered, warning lights strobing across the cockpit. Emily's stomach knotted. It wasn't firing weapons in the conventional sense. It was testing them, probing vulnerabilities, assessing reactions. Viper Lead's voice cracked over comms again, sharp and commanding. "Phoenix, we've got intercept patterns. Unknown entity is adaptive. Engage only if Flight 973 is threatened. Maintain coordinated movement." Emily exhaled slowly, forcing herself to remain calm. She scanned the valley. The narrow airstrip, emergency crews, and evacuated passengers created a fragile scene of tension. Every move she made, every jolt of the plane could have catastrophic consequences. Outside, the F-35s executed tight, precise formations, funneling the entity into patterns that minimized risk to the plane. But Emily noticed its movements becoming more deliberate, almost playful in a terrifying way. It was intelligent, calculating, and it was learning faster than the jets could react. Marcus leaned closer. "Captain, it's like it knows our limits. How is that even possible?" Emily's eyes narrowed. "We don't know its origin or capabilities. Assume it can read every conventional move we make. Think beyond standard patterns. Think unpredictable. A sudden movement. The unknown craft surged directly at Flight 973, banking sharply as if to force them off the runway. Emily's reflexes kicked in. She yanked the yoke, executing a rapid, controlled swerve, the plane shuddering under the strain of its damaged hydraulics. Passengers' heads snapped forward, muffled gasps rising in the cabin. Marcus countered with precision, adjusting throttle and stabilizers. "Hold her, we're still on course." Emily's eyes met the approaching F-35 Escort. Viper lead recognized the situation instantly, banking aggressively to intercept the craft, engines screaming, weapons systems flashing. A dazzling aerial dance unfolded above the valley, the F-35s maneuvering with military precision, the unknown craft countering with impossible agility, and Flight 973 executing controlled evasive movements beneath. Emily's heart hammered. Sparks flickered along the damaged electronics bay as Flight 973 twisted in perfect synchronization with Marcus and the F-35 cover. Every second was a test of nerve, skill, and instinct. Then, without warning, the unknown craft pulsed again, a wave of energy radiating outward. Instruments flickered violently, avionics surged, and Flight 973 shuddered under the strain. Emily gritted her teeth, forcing the plane to hold its trajectory. Passengers screamed, children clung to parents, and the emergency crews on the tarmac froze. Emily's calm voice cut through the cabin. "Stay seated, keep calm, you are safe, trust us." The unknown craft darted closer, circling Flight 973 with precision. It wasn't attacking in the conventional sense. It was testing, observing, assessing. Emily realized it was learning their patterns, identifying vulnerabilities, preparing for a potential strike. Marcus's voice was tight with tension. "Captain, it's almost intelligent, like it's studying us, memorizing everything we do." Emily nodded grimly. "Exactly, and we have to be smarter, anticipate its behavior before it anticipates ours. Phoenix doesn't react blindly, we act deliberately." A sudden jolt sent the plane tilting dangerously toward the edge of the runway. Trees loomed, cliffs edged perilously close. Emily corrected instantly, banking the plane while maintaining its balance. She could feel Marcus's hands steadying the throttles beside her. Viper Lead's voice was calm but urgent. "Phoenix, we're attempting containment. Unknown entity remains highly adaptive. Engage only if Flight 973 or civilians are threatened. Maintain composure. Your actions are critical." Emily exhaled sharply. Her eyes flicked to the radar, then outside. The unknown craft's movements became sharper, more aggressive. A pulse of energy radiated from it, rippling through the valley like a warning. She understood. This was the first true test, a battle of instinct, skill, and nerves at the edge of human limits. "Marcus," she said quietly, tone calm but lethal, "hold her steady. This is going to be the first encounter. Every maneuver matters. Eyes sharp, reflexes sharper. We survive this together." The unknown craft surged again, banking toward Flight 973. The F-35s responded instantly, performing evasive and intercept maneuvers in perfect coordination with Emily's own movements. Sparks from the plane's damaged systems flickered, warning lights strobing. Emily's jaw tightened. "Here it comes." The craft darted close enough that its energy pulse reverberated through the fuselage. The air around them seemed to vibrate with tension, every particle charged with anticipation. Passengers screamed instinctively, though Emily's voice cut through. "Stay calm, you are safe, trust us." She executed a precise evasive move, sliding Flight 973 laterally on the runway, while the F-35s executed coordinated countermoves against the unknown craft. The valley became a whirlwind of engines, light, and energy pulses. Every second felt like a lifetime. Then just as suddenly as it had approached, the unknown craft halted, hovering, almost contemplative. Its movement slowed. It circled Flight 973 one final time as though assessing, judging, calculating. And then it pulled back slightly, retreating into the twilight sky. Emily exhaled, body tense, heart racing. Marcus leaned back, trembling but relieved. "Captain, we did it. We survived." Emily's gaze stayed on the unknown craft, still hovering in the distance. Her pulse had not yet calmed. She realized this was only the beginning. The entity had tested them, evaluated their skills, their limits, their precision. It had retreated, but only temporarily. Viper Lead's voice broke through the comms again, calm but firm. "Phoenix, that was the first encounter. Unknown entity is contained for now, but its behavior indicates intelligence and strategic assessment. You have survived, but this is far from over. Debrief immediately upon landing." Emily nodded silently, gripping the yoke tightly. Flight 973 sat on the runway, engines humming, passengers slowly disembarking. The F-35s maintained vigilant patterns overhead, and in the fading twilight, the unknown craft hovered beyond visual range, silent, patient, and calculating. She realized the weight of what they had just faced. Not fire, not turbulence, not malfunction, but something completely beyond comprehension. And yet they had survived. But Emily knew one truth with unshakable certainty. This entity would return. And next time the encounter would be far more dangerous. As emergency crews guided passengers safely to shelter, Emily whispered under her breath, "Phoenix rises, always. Whatever comes next, we face it together." The unknown craft pulsed one final time in the twilight sky before vanishing into the shadows, leaving behind an electric, tense silence. Emily knew, deep down, that the calm was only temporary, and the storm had only just begun. Night had fully descended over the mountain valley, wrapping Flight 973 in shadows and the faint hum of distant emergency lights. Emily Harper's eyes never left the skis. Though the passengers were now safely escorted away from the runway, the memory of the unknown craft's energy pulses lingered like a phantom, a constant reminder that the threat had not vanished, only paused. Marcus Lane leaned against the console, exhaustion written across his face. "Captain, how do we even begin to understand it? It's like nothing in the manuals, nothing in the simulations." Emily exhaled, jaw tight, eyes scanning the darkness beyond the runway lights. "We don't. We adapt. That's the only option. Whatever it is, it responds to intelligence, strategy, and movement. We survived the first test. Now we need to anticipate its next move." The F-35s maintained a protective orbit above, their lights cutting through the darkness like beacons of vigilance. Viper Lead's voice crackled through the headset, calm but firm. "Phoenix, unknown entity remains in the area. Energy signatures fluctuate, likely assessing human behavior, response patterns, and Flight 973's vulnerabilities. We recommend immediate perimeter analysis and remote monitoring until we understand the full scope." Emily's gaze swept the valley. The narrow runway, emergency vehicles, and surrounding cliffs formed a fragile bubble of civilization in a hostile sky. The unknown craft's presence was not just a threat, it was a statement. It had tested them. It had studied them. And now, Emily understood, it was waiting for them to make the next move. "Marcus," she said quietly, voice steady despite the tension, "run diagnostics again. I want every panel, every system, every ounce of fuel, engine, hydraulics, and electronics mapped. If it attacks again, we need to know exactly how far we can push this plane. No surprises." Marcus nodded, fingers flying across the console. "Understood. Systems are holding, but damage from the fire and turbulence. It's stable, just barely. One more aggressive maneuver could push her to the limit." Emily's eyes narrowed. "Then we make sure that one more maneuver doesn't come without a plan. Phoenix doesn't survive by luck. We survive by precision." Outside, the unknown craft pulsed faintly in the darkness, like a heartbeat synchronized with her own. Emily could feel it watching, calculating, analyzing. She exhaled slowly, forcing calm over rising adrenaline. The night was tense, electric, charged with anticipation. Every flicker of light from the valley, every hum of the engines, every movement of the F-35s was now a potential chess piece in the game unfolding overhead. Then came a low, almost imperceptible vibration through the valley floor. Emergency crews froze. The wind shifted. Flight 973 trembled as a pulse of energy radiated from the unknown craft. This was not a threat yet. It was a test, a warning. Emily's hands gripped the yoke. She glanced at Marcus. Prepare for evasive action. If it engages directly, we'll have to respond immediately. Marcus nodded. I'm ready, but Captain, it's like it's reading us, anticipating every move. Emily's lips pressed together. Then we do the unexpected. Predictable patterns get punished. We do the unpredictable. Phoenix rises in chaos. That's our advantage. The unknown craft surged again, faster than any conventional aircraft, slashing across the night sky with precision that left the F-35 scrambling to intercept. Lights flickered from its thrusters, a deadly display of raw energy. Emily could feel the tension in the air, her pulse syncing with the entity's calculated movements. Suddenly, the craft veered directly toward the valley's edge, testing Flight 973's position and the emergency perimeter. Emily reacted instantly, executing a controlled swerve while the plane's damaged hydraulics groaned under the strain. Sparks flickered along the panel, a subtle reminder of fragility beneath their survival. Brace for energy pulse, Emily shouted. A wave of light surged from the unknown craft, rippling through the valley. The plane's instruments flickered, gauges jumped, and the fuselage shuddered violently. Passengers nearby, still under observation in the emergency zone, ducked instinctively. Emily kept her focus razor-sharp, guiding Flight 973 through the turbulence with expert precision. The F-35s responded immediately, banking aggressively to intercept the craft, drawing its attention away from the civilians and the grounded plane. Emily exhaled, chest heaving, as Marcus adjusted the throttle, compensating for subtle shifts in weight and momentum. Every movement was calculated, every second a balance between survival and catastrophe. Viper Lead's voice broke through again. Phoenix, containment efforts partially successful. Unknown entity is aggressive but highly adaptive. Prepare for potential direct engagement. Emily's gaze swept the dark horizon. The entity was intelligent, testing them, learning faster than any human could comprehend. But she had survived impossible odds before. She had faced fire, mechanical failure, and hostile forces. This was different, but the principle remained the same. Anticipate, adapt, act decisively. Marcus, she said, tone steady, we're going to execute a controlled maneuver. Precision is everything. Follow my lead. He nodded, tension coiled in his body. Flight 973 began a series of calculated movements, lateral slides and controlled pivots that kept it aligned with the F-35 protective formation. Sparks flickered faintly as damaged systems strained under the exertion. Emily's focus was absolute. Each decision, each input, had to be perfect. The unknown craft mirrored them, calculating, adapting, but Emily noticed a subtle pattern. Its aggression was increasing in measured increments, almost as if it were gauging their limits. She realized it didn't want to destroy them, not yet. It wanted to test them, push them, learn from them. Marcus maintained composure. It's probing, not attacking directly. Keep her steady, trust the F-35s, and prepare for any escalation. The craft surged again, closer this time, energy pulses radiating outward. Flight 973's instruments flickered violently. Emily could feel the pulse through the controls, a subtle vibration that threatened stability. She executed a precise countermove, sliding the plane laterally while maintaining altitude. The F-35s adjusted instantly, their formation shifting seamlessly to shield the aircraft. Marcus exhaled sharply. "Captain, it's incredible. It adapts faster than anything I've ever seen." Emily's eyes narrowed. "We survive because we anticipate. Phoenix doesn't just react, we act, and we act with purpose." The unknown craft pulsed again, hovering in the night sky, circling Flight 973 with deliberate, measured intent. Its energy signature fluctuated, almost communicative. Emily realized it was trying to understand them, not just the plane but the humans. Strategy, decision-making, instinct. Viper Lead's voice was calm but firm. "Phoenix, the entity is testing limits, learning from patterns. Maintain focus. Avoid predictable movements. Civilian safety remains priority. The next engagement will determine its next phase." Emily exhaled, gripping the yoke tightly. "Understood. We survive by precision. We survive by unpredictability. We survive by rising above the chaos." The unknown craft tilted slightly, pulsing with energy as if acknowledging her statement, or perhaps mocking it. Emily's pulse raced, adrenaline surging. The night had become a battlefield of skill, nerve, and survival instincts. Flight 973, though grounded, was now an active participant in a dangerous aerial chess game. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet fire burned. She was Phoenix. She had survived the impossible before, and no matter what came next, she would rise again. The valley was tense, charged with anticipation. Emergency crews and evacuated passengers waited in the shadows, unaware of the full extent of the battle unfolding above and around them. Every flicker of light, every pulse of energy, every roar of engines carried the weight of life and death. Emily Harper exhaled slowly, eyes scanning the night. The unknown craft hovered, intelligent and patient, as if waiting for the final move. And she knew it would come. The valley lay in tense silence, the only sound the distant hum of emergency lights and the steady roar of the F-35s overhead. Flight 973 sat on the runway like a wounded giant, its engines barely murmuring, its fuselage scarred from fire and turbulence. But Emily Harper's focus was not on the ground beneath her feet. It was on the dark sky above. The unknown craft had returned. No warning, no pulse, no hesitation. It sliced through the night like a phantom, faster than any human eye could track, its angular form glowing faintly in the moonlight. Its energy signature rippled, pulsing deliberately, as if synchronized with Emily's heartbeat. Marcus Lane's fingers gripped the console, knuckles white. "Captain, it's back. It's coming at us directly." Emily's jaw tightened. "Brace yourself. This is it, the real test. Everything we've survived so far, this is the escalation." Viper Lead's voice cut sharply through the headset. "Phoenix, unknown entity, is exhibiting extreme aggression patterns. Civilian safety is critical. You will need to execute evasive maneuvers under fire. We'll coordinate interception, but Flight 973 is your priority." Emily exhaled slowly, muscles coiled, senses sharpened to a razor's edge. Her legendary call sign, Phoenix, was more than just a title. It was a mindset, rising from fire, surviving chaos, acting with precision when everything else threatened to collapse. Outside, the F-35s flanked the unknown craft, engines screaming, lights cutting through the night. But even their advanced weaponry and unmatched aerial skill could only slow it. It did not stop it. The entity twisted and darted, testing formations, probing weak points, reading patterns faster than human comprehension allowed. Emily's eyes flicked to the radar. The unknown craft wasn't just fast, it was predictive. Every move of Flight 973, every countermaneuver by the F-35s, it adapted instantaneously. This wasn't a battle of firepower. It was a battle of intellect, nerve, and instinct. "Marcus," she said quietly, tone razor-sharp, "run the diagnostics one last time. I need to know exactly what this plane can withstand." Every jolt, every strain. We survive because we calculate, not because we gamble. Marcus nodded, hands moving swiftly. Engine stable, hydraulics holding, but one wrong move. "I know," Emily interrupted. "We won't make one." The unknown craft pulsed with a blinding energy signature, radiating outward in waves that vibrated through the valley. Flight instruments flickered, gauges surged, and the fuselage shuddered under the strain. Sparks danced along the damaged electronics panel, a reminder of fragility beneath their survival. Emily adjusted the yoke, sliding Flight 973 laterally on the runway in perfect synchronization, with Marcus at the throttle. The F-35s executed coordinated intercept patterns, forcing the entity into maneuvers that minimized civilian risk. The valley erupted into a whirlwind of motion, engines roaring, thrusters blazing, energy pulses cutting through the night sky. Every movement demanded precision, every second was life or death. Emily could feel the passengers' fear, even from the cockpit. She forced herself to focus, channeling adrenaline into calculation. Suddenly, the unknown craft dove directly at Flight 973, energy poolsing in rapid, lethal bursts. The F-35 surged forward, engines screaming, flanking it from both sides. Emily yanked the yoke, executing a controlled swerve, the plane's fuselage groaning under the strain. Sparks flickered as panels rattled, but Flight 973 remained airborne enough to maneuver. "Brace for impact," she shouted, voice calm but commanding. The craft pulsed again, releasing a wave of energy that washed over the plane. Instruments flickered violently, lights strobing. Passengers screamed, gripping seats and handles. Emily's voice cut through the chaos. "Stay calm, keep your heads down, trust us, we've got this." Marcus adjusted throttle and stabilizers with expert precision. "Captain, it's too fast, too precise." Emily's eyes narrowed. "Then we outthink it. It's learning, yes, but we're Phoenix. We rise above the impossible." The unknown craft pulled back momentarily, circling Flight 973 like a predator considering its next strike. Emily noted the pattern. It wasn't random. It was probing, testing limits, forcing reactions. Every pulse of energy, every darting movement was a calculation. "Marcus, follow my lead. We're going to execute a deceptive maneuver, shift left, then counter right, force it into a miscalculation." He nodded, and together they began a series of precise, unpredictable movements. Flight 973 twisted and slid along the runway, engines straining, fuselage quivering, sparks dancing along stressed panels. The F-35s mirrored and augmented their tactics, cutting off direct paths and protecting the plane from the entity's assault. The unknown craft surged forward, faster than before, energy pulses intensifying. Emily could feel the strain through the controls, the raw force of its intelligence pressing against human limits. Passengers screamed again, some crying, some praying silently. Emergency crews froze, eyes wide, the valley tense with anticipation. And then unexpectedly the entity paused. Its movement slowed, energy pulses radiating outward like a heartbeat. Emily sensed something almost curious. Observation, analysis, recognition. Viper Lead's voice came again, tinged with awe. "Phoenix, it appears to be acknowledging your tactics. That was unprecedented." Emily's lips pressed together. "Good, but don't underestimate it. This isn't over. Whatever it is, it's far from done." The unknown craft tilted, poolsing one last, blinding wave of energy, then ascended sharply into the night, disappearing beyond the valley's cliffs. The tension remained, heavy in the air, as though the calm itself were a trap. Marcus exhaled shakily. "Captain, we survived. It retreated." Emily didn't relax. Her eyes remained on the horizon, mind racing. "Temporary. It's studying us, learning us. The next engagement will be harder." Emergency crews moved cautiously, guiding passengers to safer zones. Flight 973 stood battered but unbroken, engines humming, fuselage scarred. The F-35 circled protectively, lights cutting through the night, a silent testament to the intensity of the encounter. Emily leaned back slightly, exhaling, letting the adrenaline ebb just enough to think. She knew the stakes: one miscalculation, one delayed reaction, one error of judgment could cost lives. Every second from here on would demand focus beyond human limits. Her eyes swept the valley. The unknown craft had vanished for now, but its presence lingered in the tension of the night, in the charged energy of the air, in the trembling instruments of the plane. It had tested them, but more tests would come, and Emily Harper Phoenix was ready. She turned to Marcus. "We've survived, but the next move will define everything." He nodded, understanding her unspoken meaning. This was more than survival. This was a war of wits, reflexes, and courage, a test that only the most unbreakable could endure. Outside, the F-35s maintained vigilance, scanning the darkness for any sign of the returning entity. The night was silent, heavy with anticipation, every shadow a potential threat. Emily's gaze hardened. The valley had been a battlefield tonight, but the war was far from over. And somewhere above the darkened mountains, the unknown craft pulsed, calculating, waiting. Phoenix had survived, but the legend had not yet been fully tested. The first light of dawn broke across the mountains, painting the valley in pale gold and shadows. Flight 973 rested on the runway, scarred but intact. The passengers were finally moved to safe zones, their faces pale, eyes wide, hearts still pounding from the night's terror. But Emily Harper Phoenix remained in the cockpit, her gaze fixed on the horizon, on the sky where the unknown entity had disappeared, only to return as she knew it would. Marcus Lane shifted beside her, tension radiating from his posture. "Captain, it's quiet, too quiet." Emily exhaled slowly, fingers gripping the yoke. "Exactly. The calm is the danger. It's calculating, watching, waiting for us to slip." Above, the F-35s hovered, lights cutting the morning haze, engines vibrating in measured power. Viper Lead's voice came through comms, steady but edged with urgency. "Phoenix, unknown entity reappearing. Energy signatures increasing exponentially, likely preparing for final engagement. Civilian safety remains paramount. All units coordinate defensive maneuvers." Emily's heart rate surged. This was the climax, the confrontation for which every nerve, every instinct, and every ounce of courage was now being called upon. "Marcus, run final diagnostics. I need every system at max operational capacity. Hydraulics, engines, electronics, everything. We survive by control, not by luck." Marcus's fingers flew across the panels. "Engines stable, hydraulics holding, damage systems checked. Captain, we're ready. But if it attacks directly, we're going to feel it. Hard." Emily's eyes swept the valley, calculating every possible trajectory, every escape vector. Her mind worked faster than the plane, faster than the enemy. This was more than survival, it was strategy, instinct, and sheer human will colliding with something beyond comprehension. Then it appeared. The unknown craft emerged from the dawn haze like a phantom, pulsing with intense energy, radiating power that made the air itself vibrate. Its shape was angular yet fluid, moving with an intelligence that defied conventional physics. It was faster, more aggressive, and more calculated than ever. Viper Lead's voice cut sharply. "Phoenix, engagement confirmed. Unknown entity is approaching Flight 973 directly. We're intercepting but expect unpredictable behavior. Civilian safety is critical." Emily nodded, jaw tight. "Understood, let's rise to it." The craft surged, engines or energy thrusters blazing, cutting across the morning sky in a streak of blinding light. The F-35s converged, forming a protective barrier around Flight 973. Emily felt the pulse of energy as the entity closed in, instruments flickering under the stress. Sparks danced across damaged panels. "Brace for evasive action," Emily said, voice calm but firm. Flight 973 twisted, slid, and banked in near-impossible maneuvers, Marcus mirroring every move with precise throttle control. The F-35s flanked, engines roaring, intercepting the entity's approaches, drawing it away from civilians. The valley became a maelstrom of sound, light, and raw power. Emily's mind sharpened, every instinct honed from years of experience. She noticed patterns, small repetitions in the entity's movements. It was intelligent, yes, adaptive, calculating, but it wasn't infallible. There was a rhythm and she could exploit it. "Marcus," she said, teeth gritted, "we're going to draw it into a trap. Follow my lead. One misstep, one hesitation, and it could be catastrophic. But if we act precisely—" Marcus nodded, tension coiled, ready. Emily executed a controlled swerve, sliding Flight 973 laterally, while the F-35s mirrored her movements in protective patterns. The unknown craft followed, energy pooling faster, closing distance, testing every limit. Viper Lead's voice cut in, awestruck but professional. "Phoenix, the entity is responding to your maneuvers, calculating, adaptive, but it's engaging on your terms." Emily's pulse surged. This was it, the final confrontation. She felt the adrenaline, fear, and focus coalesce into perfect clarity. Every decision, every micro-movement would determine the lives of 164 passengers, the fate of Flight 973, and the outcome of the encounter itself. The unknown craft darted closer, energy pulses radiating outward like a storm. Flight instruments flickered violently. Sparks danced across the damaged electronics bay. Passengers screamed instinctively, heads ducking. Emily's calm voice cut through. "Stay seated, keep your heads down, trust us, we're not done yet." Marcus adjusted the throttle with masterful precision, synchronizing with her every movement. The plane twisted, banked, and pivoted with near-perfect timing, dodging energy pulses, avoiding collisions, maintaining the fragile balance between survival and catastrophe. The unknown craft pulsed again, hovering directly over Flight 973. Its energy field radiated outward, shaking the air, vibrating the plane, sending tremors through the valley. Emily gritted her teeth, muscles straining, nerves at breaking point. Then, in a moment of perfect clarity, she realized the key. The entity was testing not just the plane, but them, reading patterns, anticipating instinct. It could predict reaction, but it could not predict unpredictability. "Marcus," she whispered, eyes narrowing, "we end this now. Full throttle, maximum evasive maneuver. Let's outsmart it." He nodded. Engines surged as Flight 973 executed a near-impossible lateral loop, sliding beneath the entity's trajectory, twisting the damaged plane with precision that defied expectation. The F-35s converged on the craft, cutting off escape vectors, driving it into a controlled pattern. The unknown craft pulsed violently, energy rippling outward, but Flight 973 held its ground. Emily's heart pounded, sweat streaking her face, mind hyper-focused. The valley trembled beneath the sheer power of the confrontation. Then came the final maneuver. Emily guided Flight 973 in a deceptive arc, luring the entity into a narrow corridor between cliffs. The F-35s flanked aggressively, their engines screaming. The entity pulsed, hovered, calculated, and for the first time hesitated. Emily exhaled sharply. "Now, Marcus, hold her steady." With a precise twist of the yoke and calculated throttle adjustment, Flight 973 slid out of the corridor just as the unknown craft surged forward, trapped momentarily by the combined maneuvers of the plane and the F-35s. A pulse of blinding energy radiated outward, and then silence. The entity hovered, pulsing faintly, then tilted slightly, almost in recognition. It ascended sharply, vanishing beyond the mountains, leaving the valley in a tense, electric calm. Viper Lead's voice crackled over the comms, filled with awe. Phoenix, that was unprecedented. Entity disengaged. You've contained it. Civilian lives preserved. Your actions remarkable. Emily exhaled slowly, body trembling from exhaustion and adrenaline. She looked at Marcus, who managed a shaky smile. We did it. We actually did it. Outside, emergency crews cautiously moved among the passengers, guiding them to safety. Children clung to parents. Adults whispered prayers, tears streaked faces. Flight 973 sat battered but alive, a testament to skill, courage, and determination. Emily leaned back slightly in the cockpit, letting herself absorb the magnitude of the night. She had faced fire, turbulence, near-death encounters, and an entity beyond human comprehension. She had saved 164 lives, preserved Flight 973, and survived the impossible. Her mind flicked to the F-35 pilots above, their formation still vigilant. She keyed the comms, voice steady, resolute. Vipers, thank you. Your coordination saved this plane and these lives. The passengers are safe. But remember, this isn't the end. Whatever that entity is, it's out there, and it knows we can adapt. A faint pulse of energy rippled across the horizon, barely perceptible. Emily's eyes narrowed. Phoenix had survived, but the legend was not just about surviving. It was about rising always. She glanced at Marcus. We're going to debrief, analyze, and prepare. But remember this, 164 lives, saved, and Flight 973 intact. That's what matters. Marcus nodded, eyes filled with respect and awe. Captain, you're legendary. Emily allowed herself a rare smile. Not legendary yet. Phoenix rises every time until the impossible is overcome, and will rise again if we must. The valley settled into morning calm, sunlight spilling over cliffs and forests. Flight 973 stood resilient on the runway, the passengers safe, the emergency crews breathing easier, and above them the F-35s patrolled the skies. The unknown entity had withdrawn, but Emily knew that survival was only the beginning. And somewhere above the mountains, the legend of Phoenix was now etched into the skies, recognized by allies, feared by the unknown, and revered for the courage, skill, and humanity that had saved 164 lives at 30,000 feet. As the passengers finally boarded transport to safety, Emily Harper stepped from the cockpit, exhaustion heavy in every muscle, and gazed at the horizon. She had faced death, chaos, and the unimaginable, and she had risen. Phoenix had prevailed, but the sky would always call her back.